This video is brought to you by Brilliant. One of the things Trump talked a surprising amount about on the campaign trail was oil. Despite claiming that his first term didn't just have the best environmental numbers ever, but also the cleanest air and the cleanest water, Trump said multiple times that he would, quote, drill baby drill, arguing that increased domestic oil and gas production would bring down inflation and guarantee American energy independence. So in this video, we're going to take a look at Trump's pro-oil energy policy, what's motivating it, and whether it'll actually work. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's get straight into it and take a look at Trump's energy policy, or at least what he said about energy policy. As we see it, Trump has three policies worth talking about. First, he wants to massively increase America's domestic oil and gas production. Second, he wants to scrap at least some of the Inflation Reduction Act, arguably Biden's most significant legislative achievement. And third, he wants to pull out of the Paris Accords, again. So let's start with his first and probably most interesting policy, increasing US oil and gas production. Trump said on multiple occasions during the campaign that his mantra in office would be drill baby drill, and that he wanted to roll back Biden's new regulation on oil and gas, and especially shale. Trump has even claimed that this increased natural gas production will, along with other measures, halve natural gas and electricity prices within a year, and that he wants to make the US not just energy independent, but, quote, energy dominant. However, a couple of caveats are in order. Here, Trump is trying to frame the debate as if it was Biden and the net zero obsessed woke Democrats holding back American oil and gas companies. But that's not really the case. While Biden sounded pretty climate conscious at the beginning of his term, he told reporters that there would be, quote, no more drilling, and revoked a key permit for the Keystone Pipeline on his first day in office. Once oil prices went up and American voters got grumpy about it, he quickly U-turned. Biden released millions of barrels from America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve to bring down global prices, and actually issued more drilling permits than Trump did in his first term, although he did effectively pause the leasing of federal land. Under Biden, the US has become the world's largest oil producer, and in 2023, America produced more oil than any country ever. American oil and gas companies are already paying out record dividends and performing massive stock buybacks, which they wouldn't be doing if they thought there was space to invest. The point we're making is that while Trump might be able to loosen regulations a bit, and this might increase production at the margins, it's not like Biden was standing in the way of an oil industry desperate to produce more. In reality, because shale oil and gas is relatively expensive to extract, at least a lot more expensive than oil production in, say, Saudi Arabia, really the only thing that could dramatically increase US production would be higher global oil prices. And, well, this puts the producers in tension with Trump for two reasons. First, Trump really doesn't like high oil prices for political reasons, and would complain on Twitter whenever oil prices went above about $70 a barrel during his first term. And second, dramatically increasing shale production would be very capital intensive, i.e. require a lot of upfront investment, which is best facilitated by low interest rates. But Trump's program of tariffs and tax cuts looks likely to actually raise interest rates by stoking inflation and forcing rate hikes from the Federal Reserve. Okay, so that's his first policy, increasing domestic oil and gas production. On to his second policy, scrapping the Inflation Reduction Act. For context, the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, is a piece of legislation passed by the Biden administration in 2022, which, amongst other things, aims to help the US get to net zero by upgrading its energy infrastructure and, perhaps most significantly, providing generous and unlimited subsidies for certain forms of green energy. This includes, for instance, a $15 tax credit for each megawatt hour of electricity generated by nuclear power, and an astonishingly generous $30 tax credit for each megawatt hour of electricity generated by renewables. To give you a sense of quite how generous that is, together that means, along with other IRA measures, the cost of solar projects in the US falls by about 60%, which is why American solar production has skyrocketed since its implementation. Because at least some of the subsidies are unlimited, it's hard to know how much the IRA will eventually cost. The White House said it would cost $370 billion, whilst Goldman Sachs estimates it will cost over $1 trillion. Anyway, Trump, who's always been a bit of a climate skeptic, dismissed the IRA during the campaign as a socialist Green New scam, and said he'd scrap it entirely or at least rescind some of the unspent funds. However, the consensus amongst well-versed analysts and investors is that this is essentially campaign talk, and while he might pare back some of the subsidies, a full repeal of the IRA is unlikely. This is both because it's been effective at bringing manufacturing back to the US, and because rescinding it would therefore implicitly mean ceding control of green supply chains back to China, but also because ironically its subsidies have been mostly directed into Republican states. According to Bloomberg, Republican districts have received 4 times as much IRA climate funding as Democrat districts, largely because the land is cheaper in rural districts. And 18 House Republicans have already signed a letter asking that the energy tax credits in the IRA be continued. Trump's final policy of note is withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, the deal signed in 2015 by almost every country in the world committing to net zero, where the US agreed to halve its emissions by 2050. Trump actually did this late in his first term, making America the first country to have pulled out of the accord. But America's withdrawal was immediately reversed by Biden on his first day in office. Unlike the other policies, Trump will probably actually do this one. But it's worth keeping in mind that the US wasn't on track to meet its targets anyway, at least according to a recent Rhodium report. All in all, while Trump's rhetoric is conspicuously climate skeptic, most of his policy is driven by his ambition to guarantee American energy independence via oil and gas, an ambition shared by basically every American president since Jimmy Carter, which is why his policy might not differ as much from his predecessors as his rhetoric would imply. As you've hopefully realised, after watching an 8-minute video explaining Trump's environmental policy, you'll have noticed that here at TLDR News, we're committed to helping you learn. Fortunately, the sponsor of today's video shares this commitment and is one of the best websites on the internet to help you learn new skills from the ground up. That website is, you guessed it, Brilliant. Now, one of the best things about Brilliant is, rather than simply throwing information at you and testing you on it, Brilliant teaches you by doing. Each of their lessons is filled with hands-on activities in problem solving that helps you actually play with the concepts. This is proven to be 6 times more effective than simply watching lecture videos. And what's more, Brilliant actually helps you do all of this learning wherever you are. You can complete their lessons on your phone, so you can easily utilise any spare minutes you have in the day with actually worthwhile learning. You can try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days. So click on the link in the description. That way you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks for watching the video, and thanks for Brilliant for supporting this video.